This will probably be one of those videos where I say something and then I have a lot of rage comments down in the comment section below. But I really do mean when I say that this device is really your go-to device if you don't know what to buy and if you have a bunch of ideas on what you would use, hardware such as this one. Today we'll be looking at a ZimaBoard, and stick around to see why this is the perfect device for you and your future projects. We'll start in a couple of seconds. I will not be going into too long of an introduction here, but ZimaBoard is a device that was part of the Kickstarter, and it was very successful. I think it had around 4000% of funding. The result is this device here. Actually, there are three types of devices. Two are almost the same, but one is different than the others. So let's jump straight into it and see what are the differences between those three versions of this same device. We have three devices: version 216, 432 and 832. The differences are between the RAM and the memory that you can use to store the data. First digit is RAM. We have 2, 4 and 8 gig version of the device. And then you have 16 or 32 gigs of a storage space. But 216 is out of stock, which in my opinion may be a good thing. Although this board would be awesome for some of the projects that do not require more than 2 gigs of RAM and 16 gigs of eMMC storage, such as for example pfSense. Unfortunately, as I said, this version is out of stock, but we have 432 version, which currently costs around $160, and 832 version, which costs $199.9. It may seem a bit of expensive if you compare it, for example, to Raspberry Pi 4. But that's the problem. You shouldn't compare this device with the Raspberry Pi 4. Although when we look at today's prices, which are still high, $152 is probably something that you would pay out of eBay for a new Raspberry Pi 4. I'm just kidding. So let's look at the specs. We have two versions of the CPU, Intel Celeron N3350, which is not available and is part of 216 model, or N3450 quad-core 1.1 up to 2.2 GHz burst for 432 and 832 models. We already talked about the RAM. We have 2 gig, 4 gig or 8 gig version. And onboard storage, eMMC, either 16 gigs on this 216 model or 32 gigs on the other two models. But that's not where things stop. Once again, somebody will say I can run that off Raspberry Pi. Sure, you can, but this is not a Raspberry Pi. Again, this is a PC. For example, on Raspberry Pi 4, if you want to have high-speed access to external drives, you are sacrificing speed of the USB port. Here no, because we have two independent SATA ports, up to 6 gigabits per second. Then we have two LAN ports. Yes, two. Why would you ever need two LAN ports? Well, you wouldn't if you use it for one case, but if you think of some other cases, you need two ports. For example, if you are building firewall, yes, it's possible to create VLANs and do everything on single port via the VLANs or something like that, but it's better to have completely separate outside and the inside network. For whatever reason, two separate networks, sure. NAS, one network, other network, great. Home Assistant, no, but we still have two ports. But network ports is not everything that this device has. It also has two USB 3.0 ports. Two ports, yeah, it may not seem enough, but if you ever need more ports, you can always utilize the USB hub. There is also DisplayPort 1.2, which can be used to display up to 4K at 60 Hz. Why would you need this device with a display? Well, actually, if you want to flash, reflash, if you want to play with this device, you will need it, because at some point you will need to press F11, enter the BIOS, select maybe different drive for boot, etc., and you cannot do that without the display. For some types of the installations, actually, you will never need to use the external display. I will show you how you can install Home Assistant OS on top of the default OS without ever needing to utilize the USB stick. But I will also show you how you can utilize it to, for example, factory restore the original firmware or the operating system. TDP is only 6 watts. Dimensions are really small. Device is pretty heavy because it's completely made out of aluminium. The whole case, the fins, everything can be used to cool down the system, so there is no need for any type of active cooling, which is also a plus. 6 watts and no sound at all. Plus, of course, some other features. CasaOS, based on Debian, is a really nice OS. And when you buy this device, I really do recommend that you spend some time with this OS, because it may be all you ever need. And we will look also at CasaOS in a couple of seconds. Where do you position this device? That's also very hard to answer. I know, my comments will probably now be filled with I bought out of eBay a device that costs $30, $50, $100 that has whatever CPU, 1 terabyte of whatever that was used in a bank and they sold it because they don't need it. Sure, but did that device run for 24/7 last 50 years or was it in a cupboard not used at all? We are talking here about the new device, out of box, never used. And we are really talking about a small device with a small power usage that can be very versatile. So let's jump first at CasaOS. This is how the screen looks when you for the first time boot the device and connect to it via the IP address. Let's click on Go, create an account, create, and here is the ZimaBoard CasaOS main screen. We have name or account icon where you can change the name and change the password. We have settings page, nothing really exciting here. You can select your default search engine, DuckDuckGo, Google Bing. Language, I will select English. If you need, you can replace the default port for the web UI, which is currently on port 80. You can disable auto mount USB drive and of course update your device. At the time of the recording, the latest version of OS is 0.4.3, so I will later down the road update my device to that version of OS. Then you have ability to open and log in into terminal or look at the log files. If you are asked for the username and password, default username and default password are CasaOS, CasaOS. And of course inside terminal you can do whatever you do in a Linux terminal. Here on the left side we have information about the system, current dates and time, information about the CPU and the RAM, and if you need detailed information about the CPU or RAM, click on this arrow and we see that this is the CPU usage for some of the applications and this is the RAM usage of the same applications. Then we have information about storage. I did connect the external SATA drive, unfortunately I didn't have any SSD, so I took an old one, the SATA old drive from the laptop. And that one is very slow. I will not be doing anything with that one, but I just wanted to show you how you will do some things in the CasaOS. But this is the main storage. We have used 9.6 gigs out of total of 27 gigs. The state is healthy. If we click on a cogwheel, we can see the information about the system and we can look at all the connected drives. As I mentioned, I do currently have one drive connected and this is this one here, 60 gigs HDD. Very slow, very old drive. By default, you can connect two SATA drives, but this device has additional functionality that some other devices do not have, and that is the PCI slot. Let's quickly go to shop just so you can see some of the things that you can do with it. If we look at the image, on this side you can see the PCI slot. And if we go to all products, here you can see additional products that you can buy for your ZimaBoard. Enclosure for drives, power supply, etc. But here comes the fun part. PCIe card, Wi-Fi card, additional 10 gig Ethernet adapter, 2.5 gig Ethernet adapter, PCI to 4-channel USB, Ethernet adapter this one, a lot of other adapters including the SATA 3 adapters. So actually you can connect much more than just two SATA drives. That also makes this device a potential NAS device. Yes, it has a very low power use. So if you also use low power SSD drives, you can have an extremely fast, reliable, easy to set up, easy to control NAS built on, let's call it like that, Tinker's hardware. And then we have also information about the network. ENP2S0 is the first port, and that is the leftmost port on the side of your ZimaBoard. And then you have also ENP3S0, which is the rightmost Ethernet port. You can have, as I said, two parallel Ethernet connections. Pressing on this burger menu, you can add or remove as many of the widgets as you like. Search bar will open a new window with the search output. And then you have information. This part here, Smarten Up Your Home, unfortunately is still not working. If you click on In Development, it will open external link where it will lead you either to GitHub, depending on the OS version you have, or on the Discord server for ZimaBoard. And then you have Sync Your Files. If you click on Go, it will tell you on how you can set up the external syncing for this device. The default option is of course Windows, but you can see all the other available platforms. Windows 64K, Windows 32, macOS or Android. And then comes the fun part, and that's the apps. Similar like Synology, that has a package center, this one has apps. The big difference between the Synology package center and this app store is the apps are actually Docker containers. And they have been really nicely wrapped up. So let's look at a couple of the examples. By default, these three here are installed. Files is a file explorer or something similar like that, which we'll be using later on to install Home Assistant OS. Then we have Casa Connect, which allows us to share files that we have on our ZimaBoard on one of the drives, either internal or external drives, to our friends. The other pre-installed application is Jellyfin, and if you do not know what Jellyfin is what actually Plex should be without you requiring to pay it. Yeah, it's an open source media server that respects your privacy, unlike Plex, but that's just my personal opinion. You can use Plex if you want, because yeah, everybody likes cloud services. Jellyfin is the open source version where you can host your media, music, TV shows, etc. There are a lot of custom plugins that you can also install. There is a free Android app. You actually do not have to pay either for the Android app or to be able to connect your Android app to your Jellyfin. I know, it's strange. It's like Plex or Ambi. Just doesn't need your credit card. Then we have PhotoPrism. PhotoPrism is similar to, for example, Photos by Google or PhotoStation on Synology or something similar. It allows you to save photos, browse them, then bookmark them, share them, whatever. Similar, but once again, free of charge. But these are just 2 or 3 applications. If you go to App Store, here is a list of all the currently out-of-box supported applications. And when I say out-of-box supported, actually everything is out-of-box supported, but these one have wrappers. So for example, if I want to run Home Assistant on it, I would just click on Install. Oh, wait, I forgot to mention that Home Assistant is already pre-packed for this device. So if you want to run Docker version of Home Assistant, actually you just need to press the install button. And that's it. We click on the icon, it pops up the new window, we type in our name, username, password, confirm password, and we create a new account. And that's it, the system is now ready. You see how fast it is to deploy Home Assistant inside Docker on the ZimaBoard. But what if, for example, you want to install something that is not on the list of the currently supported out-of-box apps? That's also very easy. But before we look at that, let's look at the settings page for this Docker container, because maybe later on we want to, for example, hook up the external Zigbee device. Click on 3 dots, click on Settings, and here we have information about Docker image, app, URL, icon, URL, is it using host or bridge network. We are mapping the local data app Home Assistant config folder with the config folder inside the system. Time zone information. For example, here you can select the TTY USB or whatever USB device you hooked up, click on Select, and then map it with the container. And that's how easy it is to change existing Home Assistant Docker configuration. But what if the app is not available and you want to install something else? You can click on Custom Install and once again type in the Docker image name, type in the app name, icon, UI, is the network in bridge or host mode, ports, devices, etc. Or you can import. You can import either to the Docker command line interface, Docker Compose, or app file. Upload, submit, and that's it. As I said, this is really awesome OS, CasaOS. And if you want to retain the original form, you can use it for whatever purpose you want. But sometimes you want to install something different. There are two options on how you can do that. Let's jump to configuration and then I'll briefly show you one way which I use to restore this to CasaOS, which is actually the same way you would install pfSense, OpenWRT or something else. Documentation is very easy to follow. It is divided in 6 categories. And for example, if you want to go and do the factory reset, you go to troubleshooting, restore factory settings, and follow the setup here. What you would need to do is download the image depending on the type of device you have, open Balena Etcher, select the image, select the target, let it finish, then hook up a couple of things. First, you need to hook up the monitor because we need to see what's going on. Second, you need to hook up the keyboard because we need to type. And the third thing is, of course, hook up the USB stick with the ISO or OS image. Connect power to the device and keep pressing F11 for the boot menu to show up. Depending on the type of the system, you may see something similar to this one. For example, I've seen the name of my Kingston USB stick, I selected that one, then selected the first option, selected MMC, which is eMMC drive because I also had SDA drive, typed a couple of times yes to confirm some of the settings, and waited a couple of minutes. After it has finished, I just needed to press power off. And when I powered on the device, I started recording this, and that's actually the screen, CasaOS screen that you've seen here. But what are some other options if you want to install and don't want to do it like this? Well, I installed actually on the stream for the members Home Assistant OS. I tried using this, but this was very slow, so I opted out for the second option. If we go to operating systems, you have here information on how to install OpenMedia Vault, which is the same as, for example, factory setting. You download the image, burn the image with Balena Etcher, you insert the stick into the device itself, boot up from that stick, and then follow the installation procedure. The same installation process is, for example, if you want to install Unirate. Once again, Balena Etcher, stick it in the ZimaBoard, boot up, and you are good to go. But what if you are lazy and don't want to hook up keyboard or external display or anything, and you just want to do the installation on CasaOS, from within CasaOS, and don't care or don't want to search where your keyboard is? There is a way to do that, and we'll just do that by installing Home Assistant OS. Inside the guide for generic x86-64, scroll down and download the file from this link here. We will not be using Balena Etcher, instead we will download this file. After you have downloaded, you have to also extract it. I used 7-zip to extract it, and you will receive file with the EMG extension or image. In a CasaOS, go to Files, go to Downloads, and we will drop this file here. Since this file is uncompressed and it's 6 gigs, it will take some time for this file to copy over to ZimaBoard. After the file has been successfully uploaded, click on X, go to Terminal and Logs, and log in into Terminal, CasaOS, and we are in. Type in lsplk to list all the drives. We have SDA, which we will not be using, and we have MMC BLK0, which is the drive we will be installing Home Assistant OS. Since we have already unzipped the image on our PC, which was easier for me than doing it here, we just need to change the folder and run one command. cd data downloads. Please note the capital letters. Data is all capital and downloads is the first letter needs to be capital. Enter. Let's type ls to see if the file is here. The file is here. We can see that with ls or ls-lh to also see the information and the size of the file. And then we need to type the dd command. It's a long one. Sudo super user do. It elevates our privileges and enables us to run some of the commands which normal users cannot do. Then we type dd if equals, then the data, once again, capital letters, downloads, and then the full name of the file, which is this one here, HAOS underscore generic minus x86 minus 64 minus 9.5.emg, which actually may be obsolete by the time you see this video because the version of Home Assistant OS 10 will be released very soon. Double check that you typed everything correctly. We have data, capital letters, downloads first capital, then the name of the file, HAOS, generic, I'm missing C, minus x86, minus 64, minus 9.5.emg. Now we have to type in the OF. This is where we will be installing it. Dev for device, MMC, and the path is dev mmcblk0, bs needs to be 1024k, and status equals progress. Double check, triple check, quadruple check that everything is typed in correctly, and when you are satisfied, press enter. Default password is CasaOS. And now you just need to wait. After this has finished, all you have to do is power cycle the device, unplug it and plug it back again. As I mentioned, you can use the same procedure to install, for example, OpenWRT or pfSense or something similar. And that's it. We now have ZimaBoard running Home Assistant OS, full OS, with all the add-ons and all the power of ZimaBoard. And this is really great device, 4GB or 8GB, to run your Home Assistant OS and your Home Assistant smart home on it. Don't forget, if you do install Home Assistant OS, I would really recommend that you do one thing, and that is hook up the external SSD drive, and then later on in the system settings, transfer system data to that drive. It means that OS itself, the main functionality, will be on the eMMC drive, but all the data and databases, which is the most important part, will be on the external SSD drive, and that will prevent any possible damage to the eMMC storage. Because eMMC is similar to SD cards, and it can fail after a certain amount of reads and writes. By using the SSD drive to host your database and other Home Assistant stuff, you will be giving your system a lot of breathing room and you will be extending the life of the device itself. But that's not all. You can also hook up, for example, the Sky Connect. I know this is a black version, not a standard blue one, but it's actually the same device. And with that, you can add the Zigbee network functionality to your ZimaBoard hosted Home Assistant OS. Let me quickly fill this in. Let me also quickly fill this page in. Notice this Sky Connect and click Finish. And that's it. Our Home Assistant is now up and running. As I said, this is full Home Assistant OS, meaning that if we want, we can add whatever add-on we want to add. For example, we can install Studio Code Server, show in sidebar, start. We can configure our Sky Connect, keep radio network settings, and of course then you can add devices if you want or pair them. And as I mentioned, go to your system, go to storage, and if you want, you can move data disk to the SATA or external drive. And is this hardware good to run Home Assistant? Yes, it is better, especially if you, for example, previously used Raspberry Pi 3 or Raspberry Pi 4. This is overkill even for Home Assistant. So if you do go for ZimaBoard, you can run it on the 4GB version. But to make it future-proof, I would recommend that you go for the 8GB version. Is this better than Yellow? Yes. Is it better than Odroid? I do believe that it's even better than that. Of course, you can also try and install something else. You can, for example, install Proxmox, add external drives, and then create a virtual machine with Home Assistant OS, use half of the resources for that, and also host something else. Or, as I mentioned, you can use CasaOS, install Docker Home Assistant, and then add whatever add-ons you want to add to Home Assistant via the Docker integration or Docker install page. Whatever way you go, this is an excellent or superb or brilliant system to run your Home Assistant on. But for what other purposes can this be used? I mentioned already OpenWRT, pfSense or something similar, or Unirate. But there are also some nice ideas from the devs. Let's go back to the documentations page. In operating systems, we did cover this first part called operating systems, but there is also this section called Entertainment Hub. Here, if you click on the first link, you will see more information about the apps that are pre-installed. For example, Jellyfin, PhotoPrism, but we are not into that. Instead, let's look at this one here, which is awesome project, and I would really love to have multiple ZimaBoards to use them for multiple purposes. Okay, I'm overselling this, but actually there is one thing that is better than ZimaBoard. This ZimaBoard here. And that is two ZimaBoards. Yeah. So I get at the end to do what I plan to do and to test every single possible option I have with the ZimaBoards, and I hope to make a separate review video. If you would like to see this separate review video of how it's performing as a Unirate, how it's performing as an Open Media Vault server, Open WRT, pfSense, etc., don't forget to like this video and also drop me a comment down below. Now I have two of them to play with. If we click on the link here, you can see how you can build your own arcade machine. It is using Batocera Linux distribution based on the Debian firmware, where you have emulators for Amiga, MSX, NES, SNS, GBA, etc. You would need external controller, keyboard, and here are all the steps that you need to do to install everything, and then to run it on a big screen, or even by using a video projector. There is also information on how to use it with a Skybox, how to build a Unirate storage with the external drives, and one of my favorite options is how to run Minecraft server. This guide will show you how to run it inside the Docker. You need to manually type in the command on the ports and you are good to go. But there is also option for you to install MineOS. MineOS is a Minecraft type OS server that allows you to run multiple instances. But MineOS also allows you to easily run modded Minecraft servers. You can either run it as a Docker container or install MineOS and run either multiple instances or modded version of the Minecraft itself. $120, $160 and $200. That's not cheap. If you compare it, for example, with the Raspberry Pi 3 or Raspberry Pi 4 when it was available. But as I mentioned, don't compare it with the Raspberry Pi because this device is much more, and Raspberry Pi, at least the Gen 4, will never be what this device is. It's an Intel device. This is a small packed PC or server or whatever you want it to be. On the other hand, don't forget, this is just a Celeron. It's not some high-end 11th gen Intel CPU inside that will run your crypto miners or whatever. But still, for $120, $160 or $200, this is an excellent device. If you are looking for a hackable device, ZimaBoard definitely is a hackable device. The link to ZimaBoard and the documentation will be down below. I want to thank ZimaBoard for sending me this device for review purposes. I really do love this device, and I really would love to have multiple devices so I can hack at the same time multiple things. But even being able to play with this one here is really awesome. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank all those wonderful people that are supporting me and that have become YouTube channel members. Thank you all for all of your support. But let's not forget each and every one of you who has watched, liked or subscribed to my channel. If you too want to support the channel, you can do so by clicking the join button down below and becoming a YouTube channel member for only €2 or $2 per month. Or you can go to my merchandise store and buy something there. We don't call it merch because we are adults. And I will be seeing you next time. Until then, bye bye and have fun.